partners. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Oral Reports. So, I probably don't need to tell you about Tom and Jerry at this point, but for those who don't remember, Tom and Jerry were the first cartoon characters created by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, and a while ago, I did blog Tom and Jerry's 1993 animated film, which is still a guilty pleasure for me, and it is my #1 bad film that I like, and I also blogged their live-action movie from last year, which was pretty funny. And while several of the direct-to-video collection are a mixed bag for everybody, including me, today's episode is going to be an animated Western comedy starring the legendary cartoon Cat and Mouse. But you may be asking, what makes this one so special to me? Well, you'll see. Released a DVD on January 25th, 2022, the movie is Tom and Jerry Cowboy Up. In this animated Western, Tom and Jerry team up together along with Jerry's 3 precocious nephews and a posse of prairie dogs to help a cowgirl and her brother save their homestead from a greedy land grabber. But can a ragtag band of varmints defeat a deceitful desperado determined to deceive a damsel in distress? Sorry, you'll have to find out for yourself. But anyway, what are my thoughts on the movie? Well, in my opinion, this movie was very entertaining, charming, and surprising. And to further explain why I like this movie, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, this is the second direct-to-video movie to have the same animation used in the Tom and Jerry show from 2014. The first was Tom and Jerry, Santa's Little Helpers. Speaking of which, the film was directed by Daryl Van Sitters, who not only directed Santa's Little Helpers, but he also directed Hi-Yi Puffy Yumi and Tom and Jerry in New York. Now, what are my thoughts on the animation? Well, in my personal opinion, the animation from the Tom and Jerry show is pretty similar to the Looney Tunes show style. And while it is good and not as rubbery as the Oz and Willy Wonka crossovers, I just don't think it'll ever top the classic Hanna-Barbera or Chuck Jones style of animation from the original shorts. Still, while watching this movie, I kind of got used to it, since I think the Western environment looks pretty good, and I think the comedy is pretty zany. And I'm glad there's not too many chase scenes between Tom or Jerry. As for the story, well, it's kinda cliched at times, but it's not too bad when mixed with a comedy. Plus, this film does kind of bring back fond memories from Disney's Home on the Range. Bash me if you want, I do not care. Also, I think this movie does give nice messages involving teamwork and family. And that's basically all I got from Mustang notes. So let's move on to the characters and the voice actors. Now, let's start with Tom and Jerry. In this movie, the legendary Cat and Mouse are portrayed pretty similar, but differently from their animated series. You see, Jerry lives with his nephews on the Double B Ranch, while Tom is a cat who joins with Bentley. To me, Jerry is a responsible and hardworking mouse, while Tom is a cat who tries to keep all rodents away from Bentley. But after Jerry saves Tom from a raging bull, they decide to become friends. Also, Tom has a crush on Betty's cat, Sally. Also, I think Tom and Jerry make a pretty good team while trying to save the ranch from being claimed. Next, we have Jerry's nephews, Tuffy, Scruffy, and Duffy, voiced by Cat Susie, Georgie Kidder, and Carrie Walgreen. In my eyes, these 3 young mice are sneaky, mischievous, silly, and thick as thieves. However, I think Tuffy is the most maturest out of the 3, due to him being a leader and all. Next up we have Duke, a prairie dog voiced by Trevor Duvall. In my eyes, Duke is a pretty memorable character due to his posse having an important role in this movie. We'll not say what it is due to spoilers. Plus, I think his underground home looks pretty neat, and I think his songs are very catchy, which kind of makes him pretty similar to the mariachi owls from Rango. Oh, and bonus fact, Duke's name is a likely reference to late John Wayne, who has starred in many westerns such as The Searchers, The Trail Beyond, The Lawless Frontier, Rio Bravo, and The Shootist. As for the other characters, we have Bumpy, an old rancher voiced by my old high school friend Sean Burgos, whom last year was in the Disney Plus short Growing Fangs. Now, I must confess, Sean Burgos is the reason why I decided to blog this movie. Not only because Sean and I went to THHS together, but because we got to perform together during Christmas 2005. As for his role as Bumpy, well, I think he's a pretty charming guy, and he seems like a nice family man. Plus, I just love the Mexican accent Sean gives him. And I like that Bumpy considers Jerry and the other mice as part of the family. Next we have his granddaughter, Betty, voiced by our new Minnie Mouse voice actress, Caitlin Robrock. I think Betty is another likable character in this film. She helps run the ranch with Bumpy and Jerry. Also, I think her Western accent is really adorable. And I like that she helps teach her brother Bentley how to be a cowboy. Speaking of which, next we come to her brother, Bentley, voiced by Justin Michael. Now, Bentley is more of a city man than a country man. He is also very worrisome and fearful, and he has a great big fear of mice and all kinds of rodents. Hence why he has Tom with him. Moving on, we also have Clem, the bumbling henchman character voiced by Fred Tatasciore. Clem works for August Critchley, and he helps him by attempting to steal and destroy the deed to Betty and Bumpy's ranch, with some help from Butch, Meathead, Lightning, and Shorty. Also, due to his strong hatred for prairie dogs, he puts scarecrows around 3/4 of their homeland. Also, does anyone get the feeling that Clem's deep southern voice sounds pretty similar to Yosemite Sam? Because it sounds like that to me. Finally, we come to the villain, August Critchley, voiced by Chris Edgerly, whom I remember as the voice of Sid from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Now, August is a wanted criminal and a greedy land grabber who wants to get a hold of the land owned by Betty and Bentley's grandfather and claim the land for himself. Also, aside from having Clem and several cats as his henchmen, he also has a horse named Diablo. And now let's move on to my final words. Overall, Tom and Jerry Cowboy Up is a pretty fun animated Western film. While it's not as timeless or classical as the original animated shorts, I think the animation, while low budgeted, is pretty promising. The comedy is charming and entertaining. Tom and Jerry have interesting roles, and I like that they don't fight each other too much in this movie. The other characters are pretty decent, including Sean Burgos as Bumpy, and I hope to see more films that he'll be featured in the future. Plus, the story, while a little cliched, is pretty zany, and it gives a nice message about family and sticking together. So, if you folks like Tom and Jerry, I'd say give this movie a watch and share it with your families. I give this movie an 82% out of 100. Well, that's all for now, partners. Be sure to join me for my next blog, Mustang Power.